How do you go about someone who's already asking? How do you even know before you start dating the person? If that person is the right person, you know? And in some of those questions, it's almost sounding like I would like to just know in advance where we date and we get married. I'm not into this for breaking up, breaking people's hearts, including my own. Anyway, but so these 6 simple principles really were a great guideline for me. The first one is simple and very connected to what we talked about earlier today. Is the test of spirituality. And test of spirituality means, does that person put God first and the church in their decision making? So, I mean, Matthew 6 talks about seeking first the kingdom and its righteousness, and then every other thing shall be added. And so those are clear principles: loving God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, your strength, and loving your neighbor. So these are basic scriptures that talk about the importance of putting God first. And so, in building friendships, let me share this very quickly. As a man, I don't know if brothers can relate with this, but as a man, I think God. Let me be very honest tonight. I believe God created men to chase.
Right?
Men are like lions. God created men to do the chasing. It's not for the woman to do the chasing. So if I'm building a friendship as a single man, when I was building friendship with sisters, hanging out to encourage one another, and the initial motivation is just spend time and encourage one another. And then allow God to do what God wants to do. But if I'm spending time and I'm noticing that a sister is beginning to like me to the point where it's almost like I am more important than God, for me that's danger sign. Because not only is that idolatry according to the Bible, but number 2, I don't want to find myself competing with God. That's dangerous. I'm not God. So there's a word called how do you call it again? Obsession. Okay? If a brother is obsessed about a sister, or the sister obsessed about a brother, that's a bad sign. God needs to be first. And so every time I sense that maybe a sister was interested in me and it was almost like an obsession, I'm like, oh no, man. That number 2, I'm not interested because I'm supposed to do the chasing.
Right now.
So with my wife, that's one thing that really struck me when I met her, is that even though she was already in her late 30s, she wasn't fretting. She wasn't desperate. She was consumed with her God, serving her God, joyfully, happily, confidently, and that caught my attention. I'm like, I want this. And let me tell you, it was not easy for me to get her. Ah, man, it was tough. All the efforts I was making, I was like, it's like she's not seeing me enough. I'm not getting her attention. If I got to a point where I almost give up.
Wow.
I was like, oh man. So since we're building long distance initially, there was a day when I had been trying to reach her, call, send email, send text, no response. And this thing got into almost 2 weeks. And I thought, oh gosh. And then I now sent one last text message. I said, well, from every indication, you have decided not to reply to my text messages. And so, anyway, I'm planning to come to Lagos by July, some few months down the road. By the time I come, you'll probably be able to tell me what the problem is. But from every indication, you have refused to reply to my messages. And guess what? I got a reply from that one. And guess what? Since that day to today, we've been talking. So, but she got my attention by just the way you could tell that she trusted her God. She was serving. She was happy. She was content. God was enough for her. And that attracted me. Test of spirituality. I'll have her show.
Okay, so on test of spirituality, for me, I know, even as a single, at the time that I was thinking about dating and, all of that came to mind. I had to do it in prayer. And I penciled some things down, the qualities I wanted in a man.
Come on.
It started out being worldly qualities, but eventually, the more I prayed about it, I think God started pruning my heart and started helping me to see what His will was for me. I cancelled out the first one and I wrote another one.
Oh, wow.
Number one was someone who was completely sold out for God. That was number one. Number two, I said the person has to be a Joseph. It's going to be a Joseph. And we all know Joseph's character in the Bible.
Yes.
When he was faced with Potiphar's wife, what did he do?
Run away.
That tells me he was a guy who was after God. Heart. He would do anything to remain with God. Even the temptation of a woman would not sway him, would not move him. And we know we live in a world where women do a lot. And I hear here in the East, a lot of people watch Nollywood, and I know Nollywood is full of all those kind of things. Where people will even go the diabolic way just to get the men's attention. And that happens a lot in our society. Sometimes a reflection of what happened. Even though, in church in Lagos, we're trying to get the sisters not to watch too much of African magic. That's what it's called. African magic, the Nollywood movie. Sometimes I think some of those things have a way of influencing the way we think. Because the things that you feed your mind with, you begin to think and you begin to act like it without knowing it. You begin to rationalize. And so, those were the things I was looking out for. And above all, someone who would lead me and help me to remain in Christ. Those were the qualities. And I said, every other thing is bonus. Every other thing will be a bonus. And I know when those things, I started dwelling on these things, it helped me to even focus more on the things that I wanted to do in terms of my relationship with God. And I said, God, I know this is my desire, but I will leave it to you. I surrender all of this to you. And I'll just focus on just serving. Whether marriage comes or not, I'm content. And that's what we need to do. Because that peace that you have, even when you meet the person, I guess that's what's going to attract that godly man that we all desire. That's what will attract the person. But of course, we're not going to remain that way because we want to attract someone. But it should be our relationship, more of gratitude for what God has done. More of God calling you out of darkness into being in a relationship with Him. That should be enough. For me, that was enough. And when I looked at all around me and I was like, look, I'm not, the men should do the chasing. Really. That was my yes. Because the Bible tells me that he who finds, the Bible didn't say she who finds. I didn't see that in the Bible. It said he who finds. I said, sister, girl, be still. Let him find you. God will lead him to you. Because it's he who finds. And there is a promise attached to it. There's a blessing you will find favor. Still, calm down, and it won't happen. And so even with sisters that we've also had opportunities to mentor, and also, had opportunity, that's always been my principle. It has to be grounded in God's principle. And God is the one that makes it happen. So our spirituality should be number one. And when we're looking out for looking to be in a relationship, it has to be something that is number one. The test of spirituality is this brother sold out for God. Is this someone who would love God? I want someone who would love God more than me. Yeah. Because now, even in our marriage, it's the same thing. Sometimes people always want to say, how are you doing? He's always traveling here, he's doing this, he's doing that. How are you coping? I said, you know what? Number one, I'm married to Jesus first. That's the first. And then he's second. And I cannot get in the way. My needs are there, yes. But he needs to go about God's work. Because one, he has to be devoted to God like he was single. So marriage should not take away from that. It should not deplete him. Instead, it should add to him. And that has always been my conviction. Amen.
Well, let me add something quickly while my wife is talking about a conviction I really developed over time. And I've been talking a lot more about it recently to both singles and married. Adam and Eve, what happened with Adam and Eve was that God gave Eve, Adam, as a helper, right? Suitable. And God had given Adam a job to do in the garden. What was his job?
Under the garden.
Take care of the garden. Take the garden. And so, along the line, God felt like he needed some support, some help. And out of the man's rib, God made the woman and gave him the support he needed. Now, the insight with that is this. If a man, okay, we're trying to put in some wood, but we don't distract us that much.
Reignite.
Ignite the fire. There we go. This is real. Yeah, very practical. Great job. Good job. Oh, I love it. Yeah. We're going to keep boiling the fire. Keep it burning. Don't worry, on Sunday I'll use this as an illustration. So just remind me if I forget.
Yes.
This is a powerful illustration. Ignite the fire, but keep the fire burning.
Right.
Anyway, so in the story of Adam and Eve, God gave Adam a job to do. And as long as the man doesn't know what his God-given purpose, assignment, vision is, guess what? The woman has nothing to do. So for us brothers, it's a challenge that before God leads us to that woman he who finds, it's important that we go about finding God's purpose for our life. Because if that's not the case, when you guys get married, one day she's going to tell you, I didn't get married just to cook food for you and beg you. You hear people say that?
Yes.
That's not what, there should be more to this. So when there is no God-given vision, purpose, driving the man, that the woman can now come and support and help. Get bored in marriage. We've been married for 6 years. We don't know what boredom is. It's engaging because we have a drive. So that's really, I just wanted to add and chip that in. Second test, I would like to talk about the test of, let me take compatibility first. Compatibility is a big word that can be interpreted in many ways. Some people can look at it as there has to be chemistry. Okay, it's got to click and connect and and fit well and complement and okay, that's a way of seeing it. But I want to bring in an angle which is a bit more biblical in terms of I believe that even special friendship and being engaged is a training ground for marriage. So as you're building a friendship, and then you're going steady, and then you're getting engaged to marry, and you're getting married, there are some things you need to look out for in building that friendship in terms of what did God say about the role of the man and the woman? The man needs to love his wife like Christ loved the church, and the woman needs to do what?
Submit.
Respect, submit. Okay, like the church submits to Christ. So those two qualities, love and respect, are so important because it creates synergy, creates that you're able to work well together when there's love and respect. And so I know I did break up twice in special friendships before I met my wife, and I think when those two are missing, love for the men is because we men, like it or not, we tend to be selfish. We tend to think about ourselves. And so God is challenging us to deny ourselves. Even as a married man today, my wife will discuss me from time to time. You only thought about yourself in this situation. You didn't think about me. I'm just sweetheart. I'm sorry. I'm going to work on this. But it's like I fall back into that tendency again and again. And I have to decide. Well, we're confident, right? We got to be open and real here. So, and then women, to be honest, God created women. They're so smart. And we men, we can only do one thing at a time. But women are able to multitask. Right. The sisters, even when the sisters are having their fellowship, we wonder how you guys cope. You see like 6 sisters, they're having fellowship. Everybody's talking at the same time.
So done.
So I think women, because God gave you guys so much talent and ability, normally the purpose is to now support the men in their God-given role, and so you're taking care of the children, you're doing this, you're doing that. There's so much that women can do at the same time. And unfortunately, at times what happens is that ability that God gave you guys can make you guys want to look down at us or want to take over the leadership.
That's true.
Want to take things over. And so God, knowing that tendency in women, God said submit. Are we together here? Are we speaking some sense? So God knows our weakness, women, selfishness, and He challenges us to love, to deny ourselves, to get out of ourselves. Right. God knows the women's tendency to want to take things into their hands and get things, So He says, submit. And so those two qualities are really important, and that's where compatibility comes in. And so as we build relationships, we want to be watching out. For us, the men, we want to be thinking about the sister and watching out. Simple things like we went on a date, we spent some good time together, and then maybe you helped her get a taxi back home. Simple things like calling to check or sending a message. Hope you got home safely. As simple as that, Bro, how come you didn't send me a text? Amen. So simple things that show the thoughtfulness. And that you're there to protect your sister. You're there to, hey, she's my wife, but guess what? She's my sister first.
Right. Yeah.
I got a responsibility to watch over her, to protect her. So I just wanted to mention that second quality as compatibility. Let me say something about chemistry. Now, there's a sister I used to like at some point before I met my wife. And we both really wanted the relationship. I wanted it, she wanted it. Somehow, it didn't work. And I even have some people who kind of didn't encourage us to carry on. And I struggled she probably did. But you know, when I look back, I'm like, wow. Because in our relationship, it was so easy when we meet, we clicked. It was easy, we could talk for hours, and it feels good and all of that. But when I look back today, in as much as it looks like there was a lot of chemistry, I realized that my strengths are her strengths, and her weaknesses, my weaknesses are her weaknesses. So we're going to have two of me in the house. That's a dangerous combination. My wife is the opposite of me. Man, I'm not the most organized guy in town, but she is. So she keeps me organized. She organizes my world. And man, God knew I needed it so badly. You know, and there are many other things I could talk about. So compatibility along those lines. I want my shit.
The point he made, you know, about compatibility. That sometimes, you know, we really cannot have two of ourselves, really. But sometimes, I dare say, as sisters, we see the men through our own eyes, the way we think they should be like us.
Yeah.
Sometimes, when they don't see things, we're like, can't they figure this out?
Yeah.
Because it's like you want them to be in your mind and thinking the way you're thinking.
Come on.
But you know, when you think of complementing, there has to be opposites somewhere. Because what will be his strength necessarily should not be your strength, may not even be. And it works very well when it's opposite, because then you complement each other. If it's the weakness and that's your strength, you complement one another, you cover up. So rather than have his back exposed, you're there covering it. And rather than have your back exposed, he's there, solidly behind you. And that's the way God has made it. So sometimes when we talk about chemistry, it's like we should be able to like the same things, we should, you know, but eventually you find that for those who are married, I'm sure they can attest to it, that eventually we may not like the same things. Men like to watch football. They can watch football from. I know the World Cup will soon start. You know them are cleaning. If the cable network is not working, they haven't paid for it that month. They must pay for it because that cable, that World Cup, they must watch it. Yes. And you're thinking, what madness? Why are they so fixed up?
That madness.
And at that time is when the sisters have issues that they want to talk about.
Right.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Because it's also a time for you to also understand the things that they love and give them that space. Sometimes we can crowd them. Even for those of us who are even dating, those of us who are in relationships, sometimes we can crowd them. So if you know a match is taking place, you just take interest. You don't necessarily have to watch Arsenal, or Man U, or Liverpool play, or Barcelona, or Atletico Madrid. You don't have to know them that well. But once you know that he's a lover of football, you may want to key in somewhat and say, okay, who is playing today? I know he supports Liverpool. I know he supports. And if you have issues coming up, please don't call him at that time. If Liverpool is playing, because they won't hear you. That will be a repeat event. So it's always good to understand the way the men are wired and the way, for the men, the way the women are wired. Because that really helps with compatibility. It helps. Because sometimes when the men do not respond the way we want them to respond, it's because of wiring. It's the way they're just wired. And there are strengths in that. Okay, so that's the way the men are wired. And so as women, we need to understand. And we know that even for people who are engaged, when we cancel some also help them to understand that the wiring of a man is different from the wiring of a woman. Women, God has blessed us with incredible gifts. He has blessed the men with incredible gifts. So we can do a lot more just by being in one place. We can do so many things. thinking, the action, everything you can multitask. But men are more, they can do just one thing at a time and they do it extremely well. And men are about facts. Women are about emotions. So it's like when you're going about, this and you're talking, saying this, you're like, okay, so what's the point? Always leave me attention. That's all you're trying to say. You're going around and like, this happened, and that happened, and then the guy is like, okay, I know all this stuff, but not exactly. But women are not like that. That also for us, and the men also need to understand. Sometimes, now, we may say so many things that don't make sense, but it's okay. That's just the way we communicate. So compatibility, you need to understand this. Otherwise, there will be friction, there will be clash, and those are things that we need to look out for. Like when we want to get into a relationship, we want to take it to the next level. Those are things that we need to look out for. And being compatible. We have things that can complement each other. Can I make room for them? Can he make room? So all of those things you want to find out before you take it to the next level.
Let me just chip in this very quickly. Without talking around ideas that come to our mind. This is a typical thing for marriage, but I think it's always good to equip even singing with some basic knowledge. I think there's even a version of singers now of what you call the 5 love languages.
Yes.
So talking about compatibility and being able to know how to interact with each other, it's also helpful to know your friend, your love language, and the other person's love language. So the 5 are mainly, they call them words of affirmation. So people who express their love with compliments, saying nice things. That's my primary love language. And that's how I generally express my love to my wife. You're looking good. You're just appreciate it. So now the weakness is that my tendency, since that's my primary love language, I tend to want her to love me that way. Compliment, but she has a different love language. Her love language is works of service. So the way she expresses her love is by doing things. Getting things done, preparing some wonderful meals, and make sure my birthday is special. And she speaks with her actions, the things she does. And not so much with words. Like powerful things that she does. So that's her love language, and that's how she tends to show me love and friendship and everything. There's another one. What's the third one?
Quality time.
Gift. Yeah.
Gifts.
The gift, exactly. The people who show their love by giving gifts. Okay? So every now and then, they're giving you something. Yeah. That's their love language. And especially the other one that my wife mentioned, touch. Some people who have that love language, they can hardly say 2 or 3 things without
Their hands are loose.
If you understand that that's the person's love language, it helps, right? It creates understanding. It's quality time. Quality time. So you see some, as I said, this is a basic thing for marriage, but it's good to know. Yes. It's good to know. Yeah. So you see in marriage, for example, a husband who's working so hard to earn money, take care of his family, making sure they don't lack anything. Food, housing, car, school fees, everything. And then the wife is complaining. And the guy was like, I'm working and killing myself because I love you guys, and you're telling me I don't love you. That's how one guy, as the wife was complaining, one day just went to the carpenter. Hey, can you do something? And they wrote on the board, I love you. That kept on facing. When I called his wife, Come. This time you feel like hearing me say I love you, just read this. If your wife, if the sister's love language is quality time, no matter how much you do and give and whatever, it's like it's you that we want to spend time with you.
Yes.
You know, so these are some things that are good to know, even as we interact with each other, that we're able. And there's some simple tests. Actually, there are things online that you can actually just answer some questions, and at the end of it, they'll tell you what your love language is. And if you interact with people long enough, you can actually guess what their love language is. Okay. I just felt like keeping that in before we move to the third test. We've already mentioned that quite in the class earlier. Then I'll say one or two things, then we'll move on. Test of purity, big one, right? Now, what I would just simply say about that test, and I think I mentioned it with the brothers' class, is that we are very lucky and privileged to counsel a lot of people before they get married. And we've noticed that those who compromise before they get married in their purity, while they're dating and stuff like that, when they get married, my goodness, they go through big, tough time. And the number one thing that takes a hit is trust. They don't trust each other. You know? I mean, my wife works and travels quite a bit at times for her job. I do travel a lot too. When she travels with some of her colleagues who are married, their husbands are calling their wives and asking them, where are you? Say, hey, I'm here with, who's with you there? Say, Mr. Kimeng, Perita is with me. Say, can you pass the phone to her? These are husbands who rarely have anything to do with my wife, but now they want to talk to my wife. The real thing is that they want to verify. Is my wife where she says she is? Or is it somewhere else? That's a terrible marriage. How can you be in a marriage and you can't trust your wife? Or you can't trust your husband? But that happens when there's compromise before you get married. It becomes difficult to trust. And then respect, it destroys respect. Because you've tampered with the temple of the Holy Spirit, and it just becomes really difficult to respect each other. One of the best compliments my wife ever gave me, even before we got married, we were dating and I think we were getting ready to get married, and she told me one day, she was thanking me that I'd never touched her in a compromising way. For me, whoa, that was like one of the best compliments I've ever received in my whole life. And in my heart, I was just praising God. Whoa, Father. Thank you, thank you. Thank that you kept me. Amen. So I want to encourage us. That's something, please. And even if along the lines we've blown it in one way or the other, there's repentance and restoration. Amen. But you can get that dignity and that conviction back. So test of purity is a big one. Yeah. Was there something about that?
Yeah, but I think he said it all.
So move to the next one. Test of longevity. Longevity. Now explain. We all know the concept of love at first sight, right? The French guys from Burundi or Kigali, they call it coup de foudre. And coup de foudre is like thunder or lightning. Like love just strikes you, man. Coup de foudre. I love the French expression. And what happens is that generally when you start a relationship, the sister is there's nothing wrong. She can't do anything wrong. Everything she does is perfect. And the brother is your prince in, how do they call it again? No, he can't do it. He can't go wrong. Everything. He's perfect. But just give it some time. Give it the test of time. So what happens often is that time in a relationship, time reveals character.
That's right.
reveals, things we need to work on. And so, if a relationship is rushed, what happens often is that it's only when they're now inside marriage that they now start really discovering each other. And the danger with that is that there's no turning back. As disciples, Abi.
That's right.
Or are you going to go commit adultery so that you can ask for divorce?
No.
Is that the best way to deal with it?
No.
So it's better for you to deal with it ahead of time.
Yeah.
So give it some time. We dated for 2 years, 3 months or so. And even though we would have loved to have it go faster, God worked it out that I just moved to Lagos and I needed to look for a job, settle down, and all of that. It took a longer time. But I think God used that time to really build our relationship and to help us with our communication and other really key critical aspects of a solid relationship. So test of longevity just allows it time. And I want to say a quick one for those who have been in a relationship and for one reason or the other broken up. I experienced that twice. The second time I had serious pain. The breakup was a tough one, it was a painful one. And the tendency is that when that happened, all of a sudden, the person you used to talk to like almost every day or something, all of a sudden that person is no more there. There is some void that if you're not careful, you might rush into another relationship, not because you really are in a good relationship or in love with that person. You might just rush another relationship just to fill in the void. So it's generally advised that if you have gone through a breakup, and my brother and I were sharing, Edwin, about our experiences, it's generally advised give it at least some 6 months of, relax, heal from this previous relationship. There are some great lessons to learn. My first 2 relationships prepared me for our relationship now with my wife. So God uses even those relationships to prune us and prepare us for the person He has prepared for us. So longevity has to do with don't rush. It doesn't mean take forever. That's not what I'm saying. But give it some time. That's what longevity is about.
Amen. But just to add to what you have said, we know that time, like you said, reveals a lot. And so sometimes, we also experience that with some young, disciples who are in relationships and, the first thing on their mind is that they want to get married. And so they want to rush. And before you know it, 3 months into dating, 6 months into dating, you're married already. And you're thinking, give it time. Give it time. Because it will reveal a lot. Sometimes some people can keep up with pretense for as long as a year plus. They can. And the things that you should be learning during the dating period, that's why we call it dating, so that's the time to really test the ground to see if this person really will be the right person for me. So it's not cast in stone that the person that you are in a dating relationship with, you end up marrying. But that's the time when all of those things, you begin to experience them. But when you rush, the tendency is that the things that you're supposed to learn about that person while dating, you get to learn them after marriage. And that's not a good place to be. That's why some marriages, even before the start, they're already hitting the rocks. They're already having issues. Because that's when they now begin to discover that this is wrong, this I cannot live with, how dare this person behaves like this, how dare he talks like that, there's no respect, you need to learn all of these things. But that's something that should have come up while dating. So then you decide whether I want to continue with this relationship or not. It's a time, that's God's way, that's how God has designed it. That time reveals a lot of things, even for us too. Sometimes when we go through even grief, when we go through trauma, it takes time. When you have a surgery, for those of us who probably one way or another have had surgery, it takes time. You don't just come out of the surgery room and start bouncing away. Children are not born today and then tomorrow they become adults. There's a process. Right. And relationship is no different. Even our walk with God, it takes time.
Yes.
Sometimes we struggle with things and God is showing us certain things. You need to change this in your character and you're fighting, you're struggling. It's a spiritual battle. It doesn't happen immediately. There's some habits that are so hard to die.
That's right.
But we work at it. Sometimes they keep revealing their keeping out the red hair. But they keep fighting. And that's what relationship can be likened to. It's the same thing. So you need to give it time. When we rush, there's a tendency that we're going to start learning the hard way in marriage. And that's not a good thing to learn. Really. Because we're already fought. And God hates divorce. We know that. And there are conditions under which divorce won't allow. But it's very slim. Your chances are slim. So it's better to do it while you're still single and while you're not married. Learn those lessons and to learn those things and work at them and correct them before you get into marriage. So longevity is really the way to go. Even that's the good test of relationship. Thank you.
Yeah, let me shock you with a thing. I'm going to say, I'm just preparing your mind. You'll be a bit shocked. But I'll say it. Sex in marriage, in my opinion, is 5 to 10% of marriage. True. 95% of marriage is not about sexual relationships. There are a lot of people rush into marriage out of the pressure. There is the sexual pressure, there is the family pressure, there's the societal pressure, there is age, I'm aging, I'm getting old, and so on and so forth. Let me tell you, I know a lot of people who rush. And today, man, it's not funny. You can have married people who have been married for 6 years. We have people who have been married for 15, 20 years who come to us asking us to counsel them. We're like, okay, so we feel like you guys are mature. Kind of like, okay, they'll just be married for 6 years. You guys have been around for 15, 20, longer time. So for me, it teaches me that, wow, it's not about rushing into it. It's about preparing well. Okay? Are we together, brothers and sisters?
Yes.
All right, let's move to the next test, the test of society. I'll explain what it is. So, society, test of society. Yeah, society. SOCIETY. My accent can be French at times and German at times. So please bear with me.
And Nigerian.
And Nigerian too, right? So, test of society has to do with if the relationship between the two of you works out well and you decide to get married, guess what? You will not live in an island. You live in a society. And that society includes family, includes friends, includes colleagues, neighbors. So a relationship actually is built in an environment, in a society. So I'll give a quick example of family. And I'll be very straightforward. The second dating relationship I had, one of the reasons I believed it didn't work out, apart from some compatibility challenges we had, I think there was also, we failed the test of society. I'll quickly explain what it is. We were both in the full-time ministry, this sister, and she had studied becoming a disciple in France, had a master's degree, very educated, and all of that, and decided to go into the full-time ministry, and her parents were nuts. In fact, her father used to call her a catechist. So, because you're coming from a Catholic background, you don't want to be. You don't want to be a catechist, right? Say, I sent you to France when you were 15 years old. I spent all this money on you. You have a master's, you're educated, and all of that, just for you to end up as a catechist. And I was also a catechist. I was in the full-time ministry too. So, my father was such a hard time. I was counting the cost of my man. The day I show up, Now they get married. The guy asked me, what do you do? What's your job? What's your profession? As soon as I tell him full-time ministry, you ain't got the keys too. Oh my goodness. And she had such a difficult relationship with her father. She struggled with her father. Very bad relationship. And then added to all this catechism matter, it was tough. So to be honest, well, in hindsight, I just couldn't figure how I was going to blend with that family. Another thing in their family is that when people get married, like her older sister got married, when they get married, they still maintain their family name. And they just take their husband's name and just add it.
A hyphen.
Like a hyphen. Oh my goodness. Sounds like me. The Bible says the man and the woman, they will leave their parents and they both will become one. So what's this family thing of they are still maintaining? So there are so many indices where personally I felt like, man, it's gonna be, if I get married to this sister, it's gonna be a rough one with her family. And guess what? Today, I feel like I'm the luckiest married man when it comes to my in-laws. I have the best in-laws in the world.
Wow.
And guess what? Her older sister is a disciple.
Wow.
And her husband is an elder in the church in Lagos.
Wow.
So we have a double relationship. In-laws, we're spiritual family. It's wonderful. And for somebody like me, that's a big one. I need to have good relationship with my in-laws. So test of society is taking into consideration the society, family, and others. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, is that clear enough? Maybe I should move to the last one. Okay, the last test is called the test of economy. Test of economy. We're getting down to the facts. Now, when you get married, as much as you love each other, can we eat love? Like this, even though just came out from
Can try.
right?
Yeah.
We're gonna have a house to live in, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna be able to pay the bills, right?
Yeah.
So the test of economy is important. Brother, go find a job, go find work and do. And in our modern society, at first it used to be the man can work and the wife stays at home and takes care of the children and everything. But increasingly in our society, both often get to work, right?
Yes.
But the point is, we got to be economically in a place where we can sustain the relationship. So in my case, our relationship dragged for a longer time because I needed to get a job. I'd been in the full time for 13 years, left, went back to school, and now was looking for a corporate job. I needed to settle before we get married so I can take care of my responsibilities at that end. So it's a very concrete test. The test of economy. So if you're building a relationship, you want to also allow that relationship to be tested by the economic facts. And I'm just thinking I should mention one or two things here. I don't know how it is in East Africa, but like in Nigeria, even in French Africa, at times in the church we get situations where you have a lot more sisters that have good jobs. In general, a greater number of sisters who have good jobs and who are really progressing in their career than the brothers. That can create two problems. The first problem is that the brothers get intimidated. The man, she's going to be earning more money than me. Meanwhile, I'm the man here, and so on and so forth. And then it also challenges the sister to humble herself in spite of all that God has blessed her with. And so the challenge often for the sister, like in the case of my wife, when I left full time, that used to be my job before. I went back to school, I was out looking for a corporate job. She executive director she's been for many years in her company. So, in her case, she needed to believe in me and encourage me that I can make it. And I can get out there, find a good job, and make it. And that's exactly what she did. But sister, you can decide to be picky and wait for that guy. At times, it takes a long time for that Mr. Right to come around. But it takes a lot more spirituality to even... We've seen situations where the sister was well, earning well and all of that. But she believed in a modest, humble, godly brother. But some years down the line, the tables turned completely. Now there's a brother who is the breadwinner of the family. And he has grown, and some sisters had rejected that same brother. Are we talking sense?
Yes.
Now, another sister has believed in the brother, and the brother has turned around maybe she has missed her one chance. Who knows? We have so many of those stories. Okay, so it's a challenge on both sides for the brother to rise up, okay, and be humble. When it comes to corporate matters, my wife is a lot more experienced than me, and when I need help, I ask help from her because she's been doing it forever. And so she's a lot more grounded, and I need to be humble and get help from her. And then sometimes when she turns out and say, "Hey, sweetie, you're doing this thing even more than me now." If you're humble and you learn, God blesses it.
Wow.
And then on the other side is for the sisters to really believe in the brother. Give them a chance.
Yeah.
You know, if the brothers often need help, talk to some other brothers. You know, talk to some other mature brothers. Say, bro, can you help this brother? He has a great heart, but he needs help. So, bro, can you guys get in there and help the brother? And if he's a humble brother, he will get all the help and he will turn out really well. And that's the beauty of the kingdom. In the kingdom, we have marriages that will never have happened in the world. It's a beautiful thing that we have in the kingdom. So that's the test of economy. We've gone through the 6. The third was test of spirituality. Yeah. What was the second one?
Compatibility.
Fantastic. You guys are wonderful. Number 3?
Security.
Number 4?
Longevity.
Number 5? Society. And number 6?
Economy.
Honestly, we're just sharing this because it served as a really good guide for us in our relationship and remains a solid foundation. There's a lot more other things that we could have talked about, but just thought we should share these basic principles and also share from our life using that. And I hope this is helpful. And to God be the glory.
Wow! How was that?
Awesome. Amazing.
Wow, brother.